Hello friends, and welcome to Jewels of Truth. My name is Daniel Fontenot. Today we will be studying the United States Constitution repudiated. This is a subject of vital importance. We have been told as Seventh-day Adventists that there will come a time when the United States Constitution, every principle of it, will be repudiated. But what we need to know is, how does that come about? And there are many things in the Scriptures, in both the Bible and the Spirit of Prophecy, that are written about these things. And so before we get into the body of this study, I want to read a couple of statements from the pen of inspiration. And this first one here is from the Publishing Ministry, page 98. The books of Daniel and the Revelation should be bound together and published. A few explanations of certain portions might be added, but I am not sure that these would be needed. So, Sister White, by inspiration, told God's people many years ago that the books of Daniel and the Revelation should be bound together and published, but that has never been done. To my knowledge, that has never been done. Now, in the CD-ROM, it continues on this statement. It says, this is the suggestion that I made to Elder Haskell, which resulted in the book he published. And the book that Brother Haskell published was two books, The Story of the Seer of Patmos and The Story of Daniel the Prophet. Okay? Similar to what Uriah Smith did in his book, Thoughts on Daniel and the Revelation. And though both of these books are excellent, they are gold mines, as it were, yet the simple task or instructions of binding the books of Daniel and Revelation together and published just as they are, with only a few explanations, has never been done. It continues. So the reference is here. The reference here is to a book entitled The Story of Daniel the Prophet, published in 1901 by Elder S.N. Haskell. It is a volume presenting a brief comment on the prophecies of Daniel. This statement by Mrs. White was penned in the year 1902. A few years later, Elder Haskell published a companion book entitled The Story of the Seer of Patmos, commenting on the book of Revelation. The need, Sister White continues, the need is not filled by this book, the one by Haskell. It was my idea to have the two books bound together, Revelation following Daniel, as giving fuller light on the subjects dealt with in Daniel. The object is to bring these books together, showing that they both relate to the same subjects. Okay? Let's remember that. Daniel and the Revelation relate to the same subjects. It continues. A message that will arouse the churches is to be proclaimed. Every effort is to be made to give the light not only to our people, but to the world. I have been instructed that the prophecies of Daniel and the Revelation should be printed in small books with the necessary explanations, and should be sent all over the world. Our own people need to have the light placed before them in clearer lines. And that was from the Publishing Ministry, page 98. So when will we do that? When will we publish, as Seventh-day Adventists, publish the prophecies of Daniel and the Revelation in small books with the necessary explanations, not like what Uriah Smith did or what Haskell did, but just simply those two books, only a few explanations, and send it out. And there's a reason why I'm saying that, and you'll understand here as we go on. You need to connect the statement I just read to this next one here. Now, this one here is from a pamphlets, Ellen G. White pamphlets, number 135, page 5. She says, instead of becoming like the world, we are to become more and more distinct from the world. Satan has combined and will continue to combine with the churches in making a masterly effort against the truth of God. Everything that is done by God's people to make inroads upon the world will call forth determined opposition from the powers of darkness. The enemy's last great conflict will be a most determined one. It will be the last battle between the powers of darkness and the powers of light. Every true child of God will fight bravely on the side of Christ. Those who in this great crisis allow themselves to be more on the side of the world than of God will eventually place themselves wholly on the side of the world. Now notice, those who become confused in their understanding of the Word, who fail to see the meaning of Antichrist, will surely place themselves on the side of Antichrist. So it behooves us to know and understand the meaning of Antichrist and not become confused in the Word. There is no time for us to assimilate with the world. Daniel is standing in his lot and in his place. Notice, the prophecies of Daniel and of John are to be understood. They what? They interpret each other. They give to the world truths which everyone should understand. These prophecies are to be witnesses in the world. By their fulfillment in these last days, they will explain themselves. A lot could be said about that statement. But primarily, I want to emphasize the one where it says that the prophecies of Daniel and John interpret each other. So that means that we can go to the book of Revelation and the book of Daniel, and you go back and forth between the two, and if you study them closely, you will see that they interpret each other. And we will see that in this study. We will see that in this study. But also, I want to connect this passage that I just read with the one previous where Sister White told Seventh-day Adventists by inspiration that the books of Daniel and Revelation should be printed in small books, bound together with the necessary explanations, and then sent out. They're published and sent out to the world, to Seventh-day Adventists and to the whole world. Now, why is that? Well, you could give several reasons for that, but I would say it's because if you do that, the people will see that, hey, these two books, they interpret each other. That's why the Lord told Sister White to tell God's people that these books should be bound together, published together, and sent out to the world. Because those two books interpret each other. That's an amazing statement, profound, simple. We need to think about that. All right, and again, that was from Ellen G. White Pamphlets, number 135, page 5. Now, all right, so this is a continuing series on the book of Daniel, chapter 11, and let's go back. I know we have covered Daniel 11, verses 1 through 4, but we're not finished. So it says, also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than they all, and by his strength through his riches he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven, and not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up even for others beside those. Now, we should know, and I believe most people realize, most Seventh-day Adventists realize, that when you study Daniel chapter 2, chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 9, and chapter 11, and 12, they repeat and enlarge upon one another. So before you have Daniel 11, 1 through 4, you have Daniel 8, 1 through 8. Daniel 8, 1 through 8 is essentially the same ground that is covered, the same subject that is covered as in Daniel 11, 1 through 4. Here is Daniel 8, 1 through 8. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass, when I saw, that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Uriah. Then I lifted up mine eyes, and saw, and behold, there stood up before the river a ram, which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will, and became great. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler, or anger, or fury against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. And that was Daniel 8, 1 through 8. Now, I have been saying, and I will repeat, that Persia in the book of Daniel represents the United States of America. Why do I say that? I have explained this before in other presentations. I will repeat it again here and add a few things that I didn't include in the previous studies. So, as has been stated in another study, the ram in Daniel 8 represents Medo-Persia, and Medo-Persia symbolizes the United States at the end of the world. The ram had 2 horns, the kings of Media and Persia. The lamb-like beast of Revelation 13:11 has 2 horns, signifying republicanism and Protestantism. A lamb with horns is considered a young ram. So both Medo-Persia and the United States are symbolized by the same beast. Okay? That speaks volumes. The name Persia means land of plenty, land of divisions, or land of science, all of which describe the United States. Both Medo-Persia and the United States pushed westward, northward, and southward during their rise to power. The story of Daniel in the lion's den, recorded in Daniel chapter 6, when Medo-Persia was the ruling power, represents the role of the United States at the end of the world in enforcing the mark of the beast and persecuting those who will not receive it. Medo-Persia succeeded literal Babylon, whereas the United States succeeded spiritual Babylon. So there you have basically 5 reasons why Medo-Persia, how Medo-Persia can represent the United States at the end of the world. Now, as I have said before, Daniel 11, 1 through 4 is a repetition and enlargement of Daniel 8, verses 1 through 8. In the first application, these verses represent the rise of the Medo-Persian kingdom and the victory of the Grecian kingdom over the Medo-Persian kingdom. In the second application, these verses represent the rise of the United States into power and the victory of the United Nations over the United States when it breaks the 2 horns of republicanism and Protestantism from off the United States. Is the United States still a republic? Is it still a Protestant nation? What is the definition of a republic? What is the definition of Protestantism? Notice what the Spirit of prophecy tells us about the 2 horns of republicanism and Protestantism. From Great Controversy, page 441. It says, "And he had 2 horns like a lamb. The lamb-like horns indicate youth, innocence, and gentleness, fitly representing the character of the United States when presented to the prophet as coming up in 1798. Among the Christian exiles who first fled to America and sought an asylum from royal oppression and priestly intolerance were many who determined to establish a government upon the broad foundation of civil and religious liberty. Their views found place in the Declaration of Independence, which sets forth the great truth that all men are created equal and endowed with the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the Constitution guarantees to the people the right of self-government, providing that representatives elected by the popular vote shall enact and administer the laws. Freedom of religious faith was also granted, every man being permitted to worship God according to the dictates of his conscience. Republicanism and Protestantism became the fundamental principles of the nation. These principles are the secret of its power and prosperity. The oppressed and downtrodden throughout Christendom have turned to this land with interest and hope. Millions have sought its shores, and the United States has risen to a place among the most powerful nations of the earth. Great Controversy, page 441. So if you have the notes to this study, you will see some words that I have bolded and underlined, and pay close attention to these, because when you have royal oppression, that's referring to civil oppression. Okay, the civil our civil rights being violated. Priestly intolerance parallels religious liberty, not the same as, but in contradistinction to religious liberty, or the opposite of religious liberty. Freedom of religious faith is, at its core, Protestantism. That's what Protestantism is. Freedom of religious faith. That's why I and many others call this nation essentially a Protestant nation. Its constitution is Protestant. And if there may be some Catholic joining us here on this channel, I'm sorry, but the United States Constitution is not Catholic. Has nothing to do with Catholicism. Catholicism is diametrically opposed to the United States Constitution, because the United States Constitution is Protestantism. It is freedom of religious faith, but also republicanism. Catholicism is diametrically opposed to republicanism. Okay? Again, as it says, republicanism and Protestantism became the fundamental principles of this nation. These principles are the secret of its power and prosperity. Not its military, okay? Not its military. Republicanism and Protestantism became the fundamental principles of the nation. These principles are the secret of its power and prosperity. You can have the greatest army in the world, but if you reject republicanism and Protestantism, you're going down. Okay, so notice what happens next. The next passage is also from the Great Controversy, and it is the very paragraph following the one previous. What happens next? But the beast with lamb-like horns, the United States of America, spake as a what? A dragon, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. Revelation 13:11-14. The lamb-like horns and dragon voice of the symbol point to a striking contradiction between the professions and the practice of the nation thus represented. Total opposite. The dragon voice, totally opposite. A striking contradiction to the lamb-like horns. Okay? You don't have a lamb, normally speaking, you don't have a lamb, roaring like a dragon. But that's what happens in the United States of America. The speaking of the nation is the action of its legislative and judicial authorities. By such action, it will give the lie to those liberal and peaceful principles which it has put forth as the foundation of its policy. Liberal, referring to Protestantism; peaceful, referring to republicanism. I could explain that, but I'm not going to. It's not the point of this discussion. The prediction that it will speak as a dragon and exercise all the power of the first beast plainly foretells a development of the spirit of intolerance and persecution that was manifested by the nations represented by the dragon and the leopard-like beast. That's paganism and Catholicism. And the statement that the beast with two horns causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast indicates that the authority of this nation is to be exercised in enforcing some observance which shall be an act of homage to the papacy. Great Controversy, page 442. I want to go back to the beginning of this passage, there back to the bottom of page 3, whenever it says, but the beast with lamb-like horns spake as a dragon, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him. Keep that passage in mind, that part of the passage in mind as we continue, because we will be returning to this shortly. All right, so when Revelation 13:11-12 tells us that the beast with lamb-like horns speaks as a dragon and exerciseth all the power of the first beast, it is repeating the message and the order of Daniel chapter 11, verse 3, which states, "And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will." Daniel 11:3 is a counterpart of Revelation 13, verses 11 and 12. Okay? Let's repeat it here. The beast with lamb-like horns, or if we go to Revelation 13, where John says, "And I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him. Okay? That's the same order as in Daniel 11:3. a mighty king. That's Donald Trump leading the United States of America, which is supposed to be the lamb-like beast with two horns, republicanism and Protestantism. Okay, the mighty king stands up and shall rule with great dominion. That's referring to the United Nations, this worldwide one world government, which Donald Trump will rule over, as we have said in the previous presentation, and do according to his will, which refers to that beast exercising all the power of the first beast, the papacy, and he will do according to his will, just as the papacy did before him. Okay, when we combine Daniel 8, verses 1 through 8, with Revelation 13, verse 1, we see that the history of Daniel 8, 1 through 8 is repeated in Revelation 13, 1. But in order to see this, we must remember that Grecia symbolizes the United Nations. The Desire of Ages, page 621, tells us that, quote, these Greeks, representing the nations, tribes, and peoples of the world, came to see Jesus, unquote. Okay? I'm just grabbing one sentence out of that paragraph in the Desire of Ages to make a point. The United Nations is a world governing body, and it will rule the world for a short time. Revelation 13:1 tells us that John beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. How can it be that the lamb-like beast, which is the United States, speaks as a dragon? The only way that it can is if its two horns are broken, as in Daniel 8, verses 1 through 7. Let me repeat. How can it be that the lamb-like beast, which is the United States, speaks as a dragon? How can that be? The only way that it can is if its two horns are broken off, as in Daniel 8, verses 5 through 7. Let's read Daniel 8, 5 through 7. Daniel says, and as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And of course, we know the goat represents Grecia, okay? He had a notable horn, that's Alexander, between his eyes. And he came to the ram being Medo-Persia, that had two horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his two horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Okay? So, the he-goat, of course, is a symbol of the Grecian kingdom, which is a symbol of the dragon, which is a symbol of the United States, or rather the United Nations. When the United States speaks as a dragon, its two horns of republicanism and Protestantism have already been broken off. Or, as the Spirit of Prophecy tells us, our country will repudiate every principle of its Constitution as a Protestant and Republican government. So, dear friends, you may have maybe you watched other videos on this channel. Maybe today is your first time, and maybe you stumbled over me saying that Persia or Medo-Persia represents the United States, and I gave you 5 reasons why I said that. But when you compare the history, when you compare what Revelation chapter 13, verses 11 and 12 and 13 say, with Daniel chapter 8 and the verses we have just read, it solidifies that position even more. So, who is the dragon? Now, before we address who is the dragon, in our next video, I'm going to read an article by a man named Steve Farrell of September 6, 2000, and it was entitled The Un-American United Nations, the Millennium Version. Okay? I'm going to read that article, which was published in the Future News of October 2000. Okay? I'm going to read that so that when we address the subject of who is the dragon, okay, because I'm telling you that it is the United Nations symbolically that breaks the two horns of republicanism and Protestantism, which are upon the lamb-like beast, which speaks of the dragon. Okay? But I'm not going to, in this study, I'm not going into much detail as to who the dragon is. I'm saying it's the United Nations, but as far as how it breaks those two horns of republicanism and Protestantism, this article here, the Un-American United Nations, will, I think, answer that to some extent, even though it's not addressing how it overcomes the United States in this matter. But anyway, let's continue. So, who is the dragon? The Great Controversy, page 438, tells us the line of prophecy in which these symbols are found begins with Revelation chapter 12, with the dragon that sought to destroy Christ at his birth. The dragon is said to be Satan. Revelation 12:9. He it was that moved upon Herod to put the Savior to death. But the chief agent of Satan in making war upon Christ and his people during the first centuries of the Christian era was the Roman Empire, in which paganism was the prevailing religion. Thus, while the dragon primarily represents Satan, it is in a secondary sense a symbol of pagan Rome. The Great Controversy, page 438. So let's keep that in mind. The dragon is, in a secondary sense, a symbol of pagan Rome. Here's another statement here, but not directly dealing with the dragon and with spiritualism. The Great Controversy, page 561, tells us, Satan has been long preparing for his final effort to deceive the world. The foundation of his work was laid by the assurance given to Eve in Eden, ye shall not surely die. In the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3, 4, and 5. Little by little, he has prepared the way for his masterpiece of deception and the development of what? Of spiritualism. He has not yet reached the full accomplishment of his designs, but it will be reached in the last remnant of time. Says the prophet, I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs. They are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Revelation 16, 13 and 14. Except those who are kept by the power of God through faith in His Word, the whole world will be swept into the ranks of this delusion. The people are fast being lulled to a fatal security to be awakened only by the outpouring of the wrath of God. Now, let's go back into this paragraph that I just finished reading here. If you are familiar with Revelation 16, 13, and 14, which she quoted in part, you will know, where do these 3 unclean spirits that are like frogs, where do they come from? Okay? Let's go to Revelation 16, and it says, I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of what? The dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. Okay? Let's remember that. Now, this next passage here from Great Controversy, page 566, says, but spiritualism, and she just finished speaking about spiritualism in the previous paragraph. It says, but spiritualism, which numbers its converts by hundreds of thousands, yea, by millions, which has made its way into scientific circles, which has invaded churches, and has found favor in legislative bodies, and even in the courts of kings, this mammoth deception is what? But a revival in a new disguise of the witchcraft condemned and prohibited of old. Great Controversy 556. So what is the witchcraft condemned and prohibited of old, which is revived in a new disguise? Paganism. That's what paganism is. It's the witchcraft condemned and prohibited of old, back in the Bible time especially, back in the New and Old Testament. And if the dragon primarily represents Satan, as we read in the previous paragraph, and is in a secondary sense a symbol of pagan Rome, then the religion of the dragon is paganism, which is spiritualism, which is the religion of the United Nations. And I didn't want to go through and explain why I am saying that the United Nations, its religion is paganism and spiritualism, but, it doesn't take much of a search on the internet to find that out, even though the United Nations official statement is that, they're secular and they don't have anything to do with religion. That is pure, that's a facade, that is nonsense. And like I said, we will be reading an article here from this entitled The Un-American United Nations. It doesn't go into this thing about paganism and spiritualism, but nevertheless, it's very pertinent to this subject. So, notice that Revelation 13:11. Notice Revelation 13:11 again. Okay, but also verse 12. It says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So who is the first beast before the United States? Well, it's spiritual Babylon. Who was the first beast before Medo-Persia? Literal Babylon. You see the parallel? So we see a progressive pattern in both the Revelation and the book of Daniel. In the book of Daniel, it is first Babylon, second Medo-Persia, and third Greece. In the book of Revelation, it is first spiritual Babylon, second the United States, and third the United Nations, symbolized by the dragon. You see the same parallel in both books, in both instances. Babylon, whether spiritual or literal. Then you have Medo-Persia representing the United States, and then Grecia representing the United Nations, or the dragon. Okay? So in closing here, I just decided to bind this off with this statement from Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary, Volume 7, page 983. These have one mind. Because, all 3 of these, they really are the threefold union. They are the confederacy, the ones we have just listed there. Okay? spiritual Babylon, which is the papacy, the lamb-like beast, which is the United States, and then the United Nations. That's the threefold union. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Now I realize you have the 10 kings there. They are of one mind. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Revelation 17:13-14. These have one mind. There will be a universal bond of union, one great harmony, a confederacy of Satan's forces, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Thus is manifested the same arbitrary, oppressive power against religious liberty, freedom to worship God according to the dictates of conscience, as was manifested by the papacy when in the past it persecuted those who dared to refuse to conform with the religious rites and ceremonies of Romanism. In the warfare to be waged in the last days, there will be united in opposition to God's people all the corrupt powers that have apostatized from allegiance to the law of Jehovah. In this warfare, the Sabbath of the fourth commandment will be the great point at issue, for in the Sabbath commandment, the great lawgiver identifies himself as the creator of the heavens and the earth. And again, that was from the Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary, Volume 7, page 983. So there you have it. The United States Constitution repudiated. This is how it will come about. So if you agree with this presentation and you would like to have it sent far and wide to those who are searching for the truth in these last days, I would encourage you to tap that like button at the bottom of this video and tap that share button so that it can be sent to your friends and relatives. And also, if you have any questions or comments, then I would encourage you to place those at the bottom of this video. And if you haven't subscribed, we would ask you to do that also. Thank you for joining us here at Jewels of Truth. We hope and pray that you will have a good day in the Lord.